I love that visual of like buoyancy or like a buoy that's out in the water. Buoyant is how buoyant something is like how strong of a pull something has back up to the surface.
Yeah, it's
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, being buoyant is the ability to rise above the surface of liquid,
Yeah.
and like how fast it can do that.
Why do you like talking about that? And as we talk about it here, why do you like talking about it? Do you feel like, and I know the answer to this, I'm your husband, but do you feel like you have had experiences of not being buoyant
Yes.
and the Lord has taught you and built into you and grown you?
Yep.
Okay, go for it.
So having a buoyant spirit, I think, is really crucial for all Christ followers in general. But for pastors' wives, we're doing a very specific kingdom work, and being a pastor's wife, I think, is like kind of signing up to put a target on your back for the enemy, you know. And so when dealing with things in ministry and life, and things pull you under. Life's hard, and we deal with junk, and we're going to get pulled under. And how fast can you get back up to the surface, get a good perspective, know the promises of the word, and get it back together? Like, how fast can you do that? And so, in ministry, there's like, this person treated me poorly, or this person said this to me in the lobby, or this person said this about my husband. We're gonna go through all that stuff. But the word tells us we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities and the rulers of this world. And so through the spirit, the spirit of God, we have the ability to get back up. And it's a little bit of a choice, and it's a learning curve too. Here's a story of when I did not have good buoyancy. When after we had Adley, we miscarried our second child pretty early on in the pregnancy. And that miscarriage kind of messed some stuff inside my body, which caused us to have a hard time getting pregnant again.
Yep.
And we tried for about 15 months. And through those 15 months, I dealt with a lot of anger and sadness and disappointment. Once a month, you figure out this isn't it, and it's devastating. And so I would deal with anger towards God a little bit. Like, I know you can do a miracle in a moment. I know that you could allow me to get pregnant, but like, you didn't this time. And I would find myself almost like trying to do him dirty because I felt like he did me dirty. And that day I would go, I'm not going to read my Bible today. I'm not going to spend time with you because you didn't come through, and I'm mad, and I'm going to let you feel that. That was towards God. And I lived in that.
It's not the right choice, but
right.
But God can handle that.
Right. True. So I lived in that for months, and it was around like 10 or 11 months of us trying, and we went to a conference in Miami, and the preacher was talking about forgiveness in this one session. And I kind of like wrote it off a little, like, I don't think I'm withholding forgiveness to or from anyone in my life right now. So, but I'm sure this is for someone, so this is awesome. I'm happy to be here. At the end of the sermon, he said, I feel like, I'll cry. I feel like someone in here needs to forgive God. And I was like, that's me. And he had predefined in his own words what forgiveness is. And he said, forgiveness is no longer seeking revenge on someone, to give that up. And I felt as if I was seeking revenge on the Lord, on God, once a month because he didn't come through. And I said, God doesn't need my forgiveness, but I need to release this, and I need to let this go and trust. And the very next session, an hour later, the next sermon was about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and their response to, even if God doesn't show up, we're not going to bow down. So an immediate perspective shift of, even if God doesn't give us one more child, he's still good and he's still faithful. And I have the hope of heaven. And although children are wonderful and they're a blessing from the Lord and they're one of the greatest gifts, it doesn't top an eternity in heaven. And so because I have eternity with him, that's all I need. And so I had to come to terms with, even if God doesn't give me one more baby, I'm going to be okay. And he's still good. I'm still going to heaven, and that's all I need. And we went home, and I got it tattooed on my arm.
Even if.
Even if. Just to remind me, because we still had 4 or 5 more months of negative pregnancy tests that I didn't know were coming.
Yeah, we were pursuing adoption.
Right.
Just trying to do what we could do in the natural. If it's not happening biologically. And yeah, for 4 or 5 more months.
Yeah. So I made a decision in my heart. God he doesn't need my forgiveness, but I am done seeking revenge
Against God.
That's crazy. And next time I see a negative pregnancy test, I'm going to look at my arm and I'm going to ask, and I'm going to feel, it's okay to feel sad. I'm going to feel sad for a second, and that's reality. But then I'm going to look up, and that's the goggles you're looking in.
Those are cool goggles.
I'm going to say, Holy Spirit, give me new perspective. Remind me of your promises. Remind me of my hope in heaven, And you go from little to zero buoyancy to, took me 10 seconds and we're back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a time. And so I just, again, that's great for every Christ follower, but specifically for pastors' wives that deal with specific kingdom things and things at the church that want to make your heart go sideways towards leadership or towards people or towards congregation. It's just good to be able to have a buoyant spirit. You may have been up 5 times the night before with your infant, and you got to be there the next day.
Yep.
And you want to sit in the back row, and you don't want to lift your hands, and you don't want to talk to anybody. But because you have the Holy Spirit living in you, you have Jesus living in you, you may feel empty, but you've got something to give.
Yep.
So if your perspective is the little that I have, use it.
Yep.
That's buoyancy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, and the opposite of buoyancy is waterlogged. And what you're saying, I can choose to be buoyant, but in some contexts, like I can choose to stay waterlogged. It's like the revenge against God, and it's through being waterlogged is not more enjoyable. Like seeking revenge is not more enjoyable. It's not more free. It's just bondage, and you got to let it go. You got to be able to forgive. And I love what you said. The little you have, what God does with a little is insane.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he just needs like a mustard seed sized, he just needs,
use it.
he'll use what you have if you're willing to give.
And he'll fill you up while you're giving it.
Yeah, it's true.
So let him have the little bit that you got.